The challenges of playing a ballad, mainly we've discussed when we talked about Isfahan, but we're going to talk again about if you don't have that dance, that back and forth, and you don't have the feeling of the flow and how it's going, it can just go drag and drag and drag. We did not drag on the first version that we played, and it's good because we're struggling to hear Carla, and that happens a lot of times when you're playing with a singer. We're doing a good job of trying to find her and where she is, but just the dynamics of our setup makes it impossible to hear. So in that type of instance, we have to do as much as we can to be sensitive and then get into that kind of spiritual realm where you can't hear, but you're trying to hear so hard that it's sympathetic. I felt like that's what we did in this version. You know, just in musicianship 101, these ballads, when the line goes up, you go up a little bit, and when it comes down, you come down a little bit. And perceiving the way that the arrangement works, we played a melody. It started with Ted playing the melody, and the saxophones are playing a quarter note accompaniment. Then the trumpets have that major answering part. Da 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 da. That part is going to recur. Beautiful layering. When you work with the layering of your band, it's really beautiful. Your trombones accompany the singing. Carlos comes in and let it be. The trombones. Then there's the space. Okay. Always remember that when there's activity, space is very important for us to locate the melody line. And once that space is created, we can hear the textures of the saxophone. And they're coming up and down, they're playing half notes. The trombones come back in with a whole note. Now, if you look at the third, fourth, and fifth bars of B, the trombones play quarter notes in a melodic passage. Then there's the space of the half notes, so Carla can sing. Then the saxophones play half notes. So it's like a dance from one section playing, then you hear the sound, then they come back, and then she finishes the phrase. And that ain't good. There's a gap on the downbeat of 2 before C. And to answer her good, the trombones come back in with a triplet passage that leads you down. So the triplet is like a spread out, is a condensed version of quarter notes. The quarter notes, da, 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 dee, 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 da. So once he gets to that triplet, the saxophones answers, and it's close. So if I just take y'all through those bars, and you think when you're taking your band through it, if you take 1, 2, 3, the fourth bar of B, trombones play quarter notes. Then there's a measure of a whole note. Then the saxophones play quarter notes. Then there's a beat rest, two beats rest. The trombones play quarter note triplets, and the saxophones right away play quarter note triplets. They did a good job of passing that back and forth to one another. Okay, the same thing repeats. It's like we're dancing also with the melody. Now at letter D, the brass plays a melody. The brass play a response part that is a fanfare, very difficult to play. Okay, they play with a lot of control on this part. The lead trumpet has their very good time to play this phrase. You're gonna go behind, because if you think about it, when the fish are jumping in, dee, 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 it's very straight and strict, and it's hard to play it and have it not be corny. So this is a good one to bow with the hat music. It's golden, almost like French horns or something spread out. Trombones would be dee, then when they da 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 da. 3 or 4 things to notice in that was how they played it, the clarity of the 8th note and the ictus of the lead, and the ta-ta on the 16th notes, very definite, and then where they cut off on the and of 4. They cut off exactly together. These are the type of cutoffs that are almost always raggedy. Then the saxophones answer with a whole note. Then the brass come back in. On Fridays around, and then the brass answer again. Now, difficult passage with the brass section, 4 before E, they're swooping up and they're going with the melody. They're above the melody, but they played it in a very, it's got to be sexy. Like, it's got to have the feeling of sex. It's got to have a heartbroken, a love feeling. You cannot play this kind of music and remove the element of human sexuality from it. Much as we want to be computers, we cannot do that. Okay, that's not what this music is about. It's about people dancing, loving each other, having their heart broken, timeless human fundamentals. When we play this type of music, that feeling has got to be there or the music will not sound good. Okay, so we continue. Going into letter E, we go back to thematic material we heard before. The trumpets have the same answer again. The recapitulation of this material is not louder. It's just something that allows us to hear the vocal part. Now, we have a difficult part. 2 before F, the alto is playing kind of a continuation line, getting ready to play the melody that goes over the brass answer. Now when we get to F, the saxophones have got to really lean more into this. We didn't play this part as well because it's complicated. We didn't identify what the parts were, right? So now we see it's like a 4-part kind of counterpoint sometimes, and then we all play together in the third of F. The clarinet has a lower counter line. That line has got to be brought out. And the alto was perfect. He's playing the melody, so everything keys off of that. Sherman is playing a part that has triplets. All of the background parts are condensed into this 5-bar phrase. Always Duke Ellington has something he does. Just, you got to smile when you see it. He took the background parts with the exception of the brass fanfare and put it into these 5 bars. Now, after you hear that, all saxophones with 1 trombone pad, whole note pad, in measure 3. What do we come back to? The brass answer like it was a vocal part. And now the alto starts to soar again at the end, unencumbered by the saxophone answers, with the trombones on offbeat. Now we're at letter G, and we come back to the same thematic material with 8 bars from the end, or 1, 2, 3, 4, not 8, with 10 bars from the end. We're gonna play it out. Before we stop, we finish the 8 bars, here comes the saxophones with an answer part. Bo, bo, dee, bo, do, do, just I got it bad, and that ain't good. And they gotta, and then excellent the way Dan was playing the piano. He had really good moments at letter G, where he's playing in the upper register where I can hear him. He's filling in the space. He's continuing the motion of the ballad. He's waiting for there to be a whole note or a space to do that. Then I could hear it. It puts sprinkles a little angel dust on top of everything. That was good. The trombones play and then the saxophones answer. Okay. So yeah, y'all go dee, 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 dee. They say da, 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 da. Y'all are passing it to them. Okay. There's a tendency when we have quarter notes to drag. The quarter notes is just, we have to keep motion in those quarter notes because the bass is not playing quarter notes. The drums are playing on every beat. The guitar is playing on every beat. We have to make sure we keep the motion going forward.
So at letter B, you'll notice if you played other vocal charts or charts accompanying vocalists that usually if they're building 8-bar phrases, in the last 2 bars of an 8-bar phrase, there's usually some big instrumental passage that brings it, that's loud, and then it comes back down for the beginning of the next passage. Normally the trumpets would be in with us in most of the charts that you would play. In this, the trombones are the only ones playing at letter C. That you still, I believe, need to have that dynamic where as the 2 bars before C are big, and then you come back down at letter C to get underneath the vocal where she's singing. So we have to treat it like it's a big instrumental passage with the trumpets up above us, even though they're not there. We have to have that same dynamic in all of those bars, going all the way through the last 4 bars of letter B going into C.
Right.
Yeah, for guitar players, this is a prime example of the guitar being in charge of 2 and 4. Even when Carlos is in 1 and 3, I'm still playing 1 and 3, and I'm making all these quarter notes short. You're keeping that light pulse going. It's not as heavy and forceful a pulse, but you're keeping a nice, light, even 4 going. And then a lot of these chords where you have 4 chords to the bar, they don't always reflect the bass note. That's like what's harmonized up on top. So the best way to stay out of the way is voice that chord on the inside strings. So you can play more 3 and 4 note chords, but you keep out of that 6th string, and then the way you voice that chord fits good with what Carlos is playing in the bass.
Actually, this was for the vocalist, not necessarily for the director, the band director. Is that okay if I talk to that now?
Yeah, we're talking to all of them. The
Okay.
directors.
I think there's a temptation written into the lyric to in places like "He don't love me" to get real dramatic about it. But the way the melody is written, it's just very matter of fact. So, I think they should avoid 2 things: the temptation to get a melodramatic there, and I think it's worth noticing that because this is unrequited love. I mean, it is what it is. It's just a relationship that's obviously I got it bad and that ain't good. In your head, at the end of the song, you want to resolve it. But it's not resolved, and that's why it was written, and that ain't good, instead of, and that ain't good, and just kind of wrapped up in a nice little melodic bow like that. But I think it's important that it was written this way for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I actually, that's why I asked at the beginning, was the dynamic MP throughout the whole thing. And that actually was informative to me, kept me in check, but it was written that way. So I thought it was really great the way, because it never got overly anything, which I feel like the whole story never gets overly anything. It's very matter of fact.